Hi, Leora. Here's the video that we talked about earlier this week about museum leadership and my experience here at the Lakeshore Museum Center. I just wanted to thank you again for asking me to do this. It was a really great honor, so I'm happy to help. And I plan on just making this as casual as I can and answering all of your questions. But if there's something you want me to dive deeper into, just feel free to shoot me an email and I'm happy to do that. Um, or if something doesn't make sense, let me know and I can let you know a little deeper. So, my name is Erin Schmitz, and I am the program manager for the museum that I work for's Historic Sites. So, I work for an organization called the Lakeshore Museum Center. We have five historic sites, and I am the program manager and lead curator for all five of those sites. So, I'll go deeper into that in a little bit. And then my job responsibilities are a lot of different things, a lot of different hats. I create new programs for our five buildings. I am in charge of our part time seasonal staff. I have one direct report underneath me who is a full time staff member, and up above me is a program director and the director of the museum. And then some of my other responsibilities is program is a volunteer coordinator and intern coordinator for our whole institution. So that keeps me really busy on that end too. And then taking care of the artifacts in the five historic site buildings. So there's about 5,400 objects. So doing inventories, inspections, um, general care and maintenance for the buildings that they're in, and making sure things, have condition reports and those types of things. Also bringing in new acquisitions. So a lot of different hats, and I'll kind of go into those as we go through the questions. And so the first question is, how did you get your start in your position, and what brought you to this institution? My bachelor's is in education, and in elementary education is where my focus was in social studies. And that's where I really thought I would be in my undergrad as a teacher. And towards the end of my degree, I kind of started to panic about being in a classroom for 30 years. It started to sound a little daunting. And I'm somebody that likes a lot and being really busy and kind of the unpredictable day, which what my day looks like is always a little bit different. And that's one of the questions I'll answer later. And I had previously, when I graduated from with my bachelor's, I had two young kids and I had stayed at home with them for 3 years. Because my husband works out of town, and I was really starting to itch to get back into the workforce, and I started just selling jewelry on the side because I just didn't know what to do with my time. And um, one of my mutual friends had a jewelry party at her house, and she was asking, or she was talking about an exhibit that was happening at the museum that she worked at, which happens to be the institution I work for now. And she was talking about this really great exhibit, and I was just like totally kind of just impressed right away, and just super interested in what she was talking about this exhibit. And I asked her, like, what is your degree in? Because I would love to do something like that. And she said, oh, well, she had an arts degree from the University of Michigan. And I thought, okay, never mind, that's never going to work. And she's like, but you do a really great job speaking to people. Why don't you? We have a couple of openings at the museum, and you could do that. One was a position for a part-time seasonal staff at our Hackley and Hume historic site, which is in 1890, two houses, two mansions. They're Victorian style mansions, and their carriage house, also the Fire Barn Museum and the Skolnick House of the Depression era, which is where I program manage today, are those five buildings. And so it was giving basic tours May through October. We were only open like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I thought, sure, I could do that. To me, it seemed very similar to teaching because I could take the information that was given to me and find a way to express that to people in an interesting and fun way. So to me, it was very transferable to my education degree that I had just finished. And so applied for that. There was also an assistant program manager job at the time, and I applied for that too because I had the education degree, and I thought, I've been working with schools for the last 10 years. Um, I'm going to go for it. I didn't get that position, but they ended up hiring within, and it kind of made sense at the time. So for the institution to hire who they did. But I did get hired as the part-time seasonal interpretive staff member is what they're called. And so basically a docent or a guide through the Hackley and Hume Historic Site, the Fire Barn Museum, and the Skolnick House of the Depression era. And then I also worked part-time on the weekends at the front desk at our main museum center that's just 2 blocks away from the office I'm sitting in now. And then also working in the gift shop one day a week on Sundays. So I kind of was like, I'll do anything. And I just was super, I never thought about museum work prior to getting this job. I I'd never really heard about it in my undergrad or in high school. I never thought museum profession all the way growing up. I kind of came from a family. It was like, you're either a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I'll go teacher. And so got I kind of ended up in the museum field sort of through the back door. Um, but at the same time, the next question is like, what qualified you for your position? And again, the education degree I really thought was transferable. I can take the information given to me and produce something for, the visitors here, like I would for students in a fun and interesting way. And that made me a great candidate for the manager position when that opened up as well. Um, So I wouldn't consider myself hired from within. I would more consider myself I was in kind of the right place at the right time. Um, and Previously, I was employed for an after school program that was a 21st century learning grant of the state of Michigan. And so I was a program coordinator for this after school program in one school for first through fourth graders. And so the program ended up having like 6 different schools that they were involved in at the middle school level and at the elementary level. And again, my degree had kind of set me up for working in that realm, the after school programming realm. And I really like the non traditional education. I think I had no idea then, but I think that's definitely where my strong suit lies is non traditional education. And so I had worked for that program for about 5 years and rose the program from there was no coordinator when I started. It was a new position that they added for me. And I ended up, my first week, I had 6 kids, and within 6 weeks, I had 125 kids. So it was a big deal. They got a meal after school for free. All the programs were free. They ran all throughout the school year from 3:30 to 5:30, and then 6 weeks in the summertime. So I had a small staff. I had a budget of about 80 to $90,000 a year, and that included my staff budget. And so when I came to the museum, I had some of those same things that they were looking for. And I didn't know that they were looking for. They were looking to replace the historic sites program manager at that time, and I had no idea that that was going to be a thing. But my past had helped me in my interview process grow me into the position that I have today. I wasn't really hired within, but it did help that I knew the exhibits curator. That's whose party I was at when I was selling jewelry. So and I knew like the jewelry thing. I wanted a profession, I wanted a career, and that was just like to get me out of the house a couple days a week when I had toddlers. 'Cause that was a crazy time. Um, so let's see. The next question is, have any past positions or experiences specifically helped you in your current role? And I think that was kind of answered with the after school program. Uh, I was creating new programs, so we had a lot of money coming in because it was a state grant. So I could say, okay, let's teach the kids how to use a GPS or how to do geocaching. So I could purchase like a ton of different things for this one program to teach kids about this, that, or the other thing. It was really to give under um, low like low income children a chance to see and learn things that they may not have the opportunity to learn. And that's what the grant was all about, and helping with homework help and all of that stuff. So I developed a lot of programs in the past and had, again, a staff of about 7. Currently, I have a staff of 9 part-time seasonal staff. So it's kind of like equitable. It's kind of the same in that area. The museum stuff is where I really didn't have that type of background. So I had like the teaching stuff that was transferable, but as far as when I took over taking care of the buildings and the objects inside of them, I got really nervous about that because I always felt like my education degree was a foundation for building programs at the museum. But then taking care of artifacts and buildings and those types of things and writing exhibits and all of that, I didn't have that foundation, and I was learning on the job, and I've been here for 7 years, and I've learned a lot. However, I felt like I really needed that foundation underneath me to continue to do my job well. And so in 2016, I applied for the JHU Museum Studies program, and I completed that this past summer was my last semester. So that was, all part of growing that foundation under me to then care for the artifacts that I'm in charge of at the historic sites. Let's see. Describe my typical day. And I think when people ask me like, what do you do and what does that mean and what does a typical day look like? My typical day, I never know what's going to happen. This video, of course, is like something that I haven't done in a typical day. But if I could generalize what I do, I have a lot of meetings. As a program manager, I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top. And so it's my job to make sure that I relate all information to the bottom and to the top. And navigating that can be really tricky because people at the bottom need a certain thing, people at the top want or need a certain thing, and it's my job to figure out how to accomplish that. And that's always the trickiest part of my day. I answer a lot of phone calls from the public, about operations and when we're open and how much things cost. We do a lot of group tours, school tours, and a lot of programs. Like you can see some of the flyers or the big posters behind me. Those are some programs that I've created, and those are from their first year that they launched. And so, um, creating new programs, doing a lot of research, inventorying objects once a year. It's always something different. And answering a lot of emails. I bring in a lot of new volunteers. So doing those type of interviews and paperwork that goes with that, that's something I'm looking in 2019 to kind of get off my plate. Um, but that's not a finalized thing yet. Um, and so, like, what else the rest of my day? So right now, I'll kind of let you know what I'm working on currently. Maybe that will help. At the end of this month, we have an obituary tour. And so my job, our local community doesn't come to the Hackley and Hume historic site very often because it's a historic house. They hear the same stories. Oftentimes, we'll keep furniture in a place for a longer period of time. So they just don't feel like they can come back here over and over. So my job is to really create new opportunities for our community who support us in a county-wide millage to continue to come back to the Hackley and Hume Historic Site as often as possible throughout a season, which is May through October. So one of the things we do behind us is an all access tour. So we were doing that annually by opening up the attics, porches, basements, closets, all the unseen sections of the houses. And now we do that a monthly tour. And that this is the first year we've done a monthly tour, and it's brought in about 300 people this year. So, we're not huge potatoes. We're pretty small potatoes. We live in a county of about 38,000 people, so not very big. And we've had a countywide millage for the last since like 1981. And so it used to be a 5-year millage. Now it's a 10-year millage, and county residents pay about 1380 something out of their annual taxes to help support us. And that is about 65% of our operations. Um, and so bringing people back to the Lakeshore Museum Center, to the Hackley and Hume Historic Site, is my main goal. So we do all access tours. At the end of the month, we have an obituary tour. So we talk about things that you wouldn't typically hear on a classic Hackley and Hume tour. And so the obituary tour, it gives different information about death and dying practices during the Victorian era, and we read the obituaries of those that have passed in either house or had their funerals in either house. And so that's about an hour tour. We offer it 4 times in a weekend, and usually get about 150 people each year that sign up for that and pay for that. And so I'm getting ready for that. So we have a casket that has to be brought down out of storage and cleaned. We have some artifacts coming from our collection center to help offer that experience. We have some hair art that will be coming from our collection center. We have a casket that comes from our collection center. So, kind of coordinating with other staff members, our collections manager, and we have a lot of props that we get ready with our exhibits curator, so fake flowers and vases, and we set up 2 of our rooms as actual funerals. And so kind of an interesting one that we do each year. And then we turn around and get ready for Christmas. And so we work with about 10 different decorating groups out of the community that help us decorate for Christmas. So they'll come 1 or 2 days, and then they decorate 1 or 2 rooms and help us with our Christmas season. So it just kind of depends on the day what I'm doing based on what's happening at the historic sites. Last week we had our big annual volunteer dinner, and that was about 80 people that I was arranging dinner for, and entertainment and awards, and um, the whole evening for. So it just really depends on which program is going on or which event is happening that I'm working on those. And in the off season, the winter season, we do a lot of the inventorying, the inspections. We'll reset for the next season based on what we want to emphasize on for the next season, and train new staff, hire new staff that need to be hired. Having seasonal staff members that only work May through October, we have a lot of turnover each year, just because we pay minimum wage, and they can only work 26 to 30 weeks out of the year. And then we know that they're like younger people usually that have to find real jobs eventually. So we spend a lot of time training as well, and hiring. So again, just depends on what's going on. And if you want to know something specific, you can contact me too, and I can go deeper into a program or the curatorial stuff or the volunteer stuff. Also, we're working on budgets right now. And so we're finalizing all of our budgets for 2019, which means we have to kind of know what we're doing for programs in 2019. Um, and so kind of organizing what's going to happen in the next season. So you have to be right now, and you have to be able to look ahead into the future about where you want to see the sites grow, and input from the staff that work below me and the staff that work above me, to marry those ideas and the numbers and the practicality that goes along with it. So I would say it's a lot of like big picture thinking, and you have to also dive into the day to day as well. That's kind of a typical day. I don't know. It's crazy. um, what's the biggest thing I've gained from my opportunity here or in general? Well, I think that I've gained a ton in the past 7 years. I came in thinking I wanted to, you know, just teach. And what I really learned is that I love the museum field. I love the curatorial work, and I love that I don't have like one specific thing that I do day to day, always, always, always. It's always a mixture of things. And I've gained so much knowledge of the world and knowledge of history and knowledge of, where we've been in the past. And I think that those are really neat things. I've gained so much from, you know, going to Johns Hopkins, and met so many different people and learned such depth of the museum field. And I feel like that's been a huge benefit, not only in my career, but in my life. It's just really offered a lot of really great, openings, opportunities in my mind to create something further. And um, hopefully that I'm one of the pillars in our museum that can help make those decisions and those tough decisions during tough times or fun times or whatever. Just having all those different tools in my toolbox from JHU and from just the working experience of being in a museum. So I think that that's probably, I don't know what opportunities are ahead for me, or, I live in this community. I really love this community. I love the idea that I can give back to the community by offering, their history. So I hope to stay here for forever, really. I don't always think that I have to be in this role. I would love to just grow with the institution, and whatever the institution needs, that I could move into that. So, um, but yeah, I would say just from working here, it's gained me the opportunity to know more about museums and their importance, and going to school and furthering that education and that career. So I don't know. That's kind of a cheesy answer. Um, okay, so the next question is there an experience that you will never forget at the Lakeshore Museum Center? Um, I think it's a lot of different things. I love getting to talk with people, and people come and visit the site from all over the world. And I think learning from people around me is something that I think that I not only have gained, but something I don't think that I'll forget very quickly. Um, I think working with other professionals in the field has been a really great thing as well, that I don't think I'd ever forget. I can't think of any like experience that really sticks out that I will never forget. Um, I mean, I have some negatives. Those always jump out first, right? So like the first time I had to fire somebody, that will probably stick out in my mind for a long time. Anytime I have to do like any kind of like correction or reprimand, not my favorite days. Some of the really good days are, when kids come through on school tours and they say something really funny or cute or clever. And, you know, those are always like really the fun days. Or when you see like kind of that aha, like, oh, okay, I see. And those are always like, you feel like you've imparted some kind of like, I don't know, remembrance with them or experience with them. And I think those mean a lot. So I used to do some outreaches to the schools with some kits that I would take about Native Americans or, other topics. And I think, those times were really fun too, because I'd be in the grocery store and they'd be like, "Hey, Miss Erin, you came to my class." And I wouldn't recognize them. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, what did I teach you about?" And so then we could talk about that topic. And so those are kind of fun when you feel like you're giving back to your community and those next generations that are going to come back to the museum and experience for themselves later on as adults or in a different group coming back. So I think those are kind of the most memorable things. Um, who do you report to and communicate with the most? So again, I communicate up above me and down below me. And so I have one director above me who is the program director. And what I didn't mention before is that our museum has three different sections. We started out as a main museum center, and that's the Lakeshore Museum Center. We've been in existence since 1937. In 1986, the museum purchased the Hackley and Hume Historic Site, so the two Victorian mansions, and it has a carriage house behind it. In 1989, they added the Fire Barn Museum to the museum buildings. And then in 2007, we added the Depression era house, the Skolnick House of the Depression era. And so the historic site side of it grew. And since 1986, we had one director who was kind of growing that. In the early 2000s, he had another really great idea is to bring an outside living history park to, in the fold of the rest of the museum. And that is called Michigan's Heritage Park. And they're about 20 miles north of all of our downtown sites. So our main museum center and all of our historic sites are within like a 2-block radius. So you could walk from one to the other really easily. And this new park, excuse me, this new park is about 20 miles north. And that's an outside living history park that walks through 10,000 years of Muskegon history. It starts with a mastodon dig and it goes all the way to the 1930s CCC camp. And in the middle, there is around the walking trail, this outside trail, there's a wigwam village, there's a fur trader's post, there's a settler's cabin, there's a Civil War camp, and a farmhouse. Excuse me. And so all of those things have costume interpreters. They're cooking out there. They're not first person, they're third person. And so we have program manager at our main museum center, at have Michigan's Heritage Park, and then at the historic sites. So our program director directs each of the program managers, and kind of underneath that, the assistant program managers that ride underneath that area. And so, so she's ahead of, basically, there are 7 of us in the programming department that she's really in charge of. So she has the higher budgeting responsibilities than I do. You know, I can create proposals and this is what I want to do, this is what I want to see. But she really works with the director and making that all cohesive, and you can do this, but this is not going to work this year. And so she's at that director level. And then above that is our director. And so we also have a curatorial staff, we have an archivist, we have a collections manager. And so I do attend those meetings as well. So I'm kind of like one leg in this and one leg in that, just because of how the historic sites are set up. About 4 years ago, our historic sites curator was let go. And I kind of jumped in, was like, I can do all of this. Give me an assistant and I can make this happen. Because our interpretation there was just a gap. So I was creating programs. The historic sites curator was in a different department, and there wasn't this marrying that we needed to happen for the interpretation for the historic site to grow and to continue to be accurate. And there was just a lot of problems. I'd create a program like the obituary tour, and I would have to wait for her to set the house so I could do my program. And it became really frustrating because she wouldn't do anything until like the day before. And we're talking about, changing up so many rooms, and it takes a lot of time. And so there was just a conflict there. And so I kind of offered to take the curatorial role as well, because I think it will make our interpretation stronger. So that kind of worked. And we've been doing that the last 4 years. So it's been great. We know so much more about what we are doing, and we can then teach our interpretive staff members to go out and talk about the things that we're learning and what we know now. So that's really good. And so I report to kind of them as well, the curatorial staff. We have a manager who is working into the director role. But right now he's just a manager. And so he's also our archivist. And So things are kind of moving and changing a little bit with that department. We have a maintenance department, we have a finance department, and we have a development department. And then we hire out for a marketing firm. So I talk a lot with each of the departments. And so when we get to the advice part, I always say that's my biggest piece of advice, or the biggest thing I was surprised at too, is that museum work, you need all these other departments to do your one job. And so that is great at many times, and other times it can be really frustrating because everybody kind of has their own agendas about how they want to do things, how to get things done, and then kind of blending those to create happiness for everybody is a little bit can be a little tough sometimes. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in the advice section. And so then again, I have one direct report that is a full-time staff member right under me, so that he's the assistant program manager, and then he helps a lot with the research and the curatorial stuff as well. And so that's been a new thing for me in the last 4 years. I'd always managed, part-time to really, really part-time staff, then to managing somebody that works full-time. And that was a learning curve that I really didn't expect. I thought it would be a lot the same, but I think we've worked through that pretty well. And now we're smooth sailing, so that's good. And then we have 9 part-time seasonal staff who come in May through October and give tours at all the 5 historic buildings. So they stay here at the historic sites, but they kind of can rotate through the different buildings. So they don't do the same thing every day. Um, and that works really, really nicely. So, making sure that we have enough staff for regular tours, for school tours, for bus tours, and now we have cruise ships that cruise the Great Lakes that come here as well. So working with the city to make sure that we're open and have the staff members for those times. Um, and so, yeah, so they all kind of answer to me. We do an interpretive staff training each year. We do trainings every Friday throughout the season and meetings throughout the season. And we try to keep a really close knit relationship with them. We know that if their work life is bad, they're probably not going to give a great tour. So we definitely try to have an upbeat and fun time at the historic sites because we know they're happy. The visitors are happy too. And so those are kind of my reports below me. Also, we have a preservationist who works full time, and that's a new position. He was maintenance, considered maintenance before, and I was like, he is doing way more than maintenance. He's got to have a better title. He's rebuilding windows and restructuring pieces of porches that have, dry rotted, and he does more than that. So they did end up giving him better title. So we work really closely together, having weekly meetings with him, so we know what's happening on the outside of the house or inside of the house, and he knows what we're doing outside or inside of the house as well. So a lot of communication, there's a lot of communicating that happens. Um, and that's probably one of my harder bits because I'm pretty independent, and so going back and remembering like, oh yeah, I should probably talk to this person about that. So that's one of the places where I'm trying to grow in this next year is just being a better communicator with the people around me. So it's not as isolating to do that either. And I can definitely isolate myself because I get so busy doing my own thing and I'm like, oh, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing. But then to share that along with all the staff that, you know, they don't they won't know that unless I communicate that with them. So I think that helps people get on your page as well. So communicating is a big deal um, in my day. Um, in what context do you manage or lead? I like to lead by example a lot. When we have new staff and we're doing school tours, we have a lot of like anthropology degrees come in, we have a lot of history degrees come in. We have a lot of yeah, that anthropology, paleontology, like all that history stuff and all that typical museum work that you would imagine. And I feel like my strong suit is, oh, well, I did come from education, so I can help with school tours, especially. because those students or those young people coming in may not understand how to work on classroom management or behavior styles or like all these different things in a school tour because we're bringing them through a historic house, second, third, and fourth graders mainly, and how to do that really well and how to communicate on their level and how to manage crazy, chaotic school tours because they are. So I like to lead by example. I will do a lot of the programs first and lead quite a few of them before that person will take over from there. Um, I do a program that we have to do on Monday, and I dress up as a maid from the 1800s. And we don't do a lot of costuming stuff, only when teachers ask us. And so I dress up as the maid. So I just passed that off to another staff member, an interpretive staff member. So teaching her kind of what to do, how to do that. And she's watched me do that program before. So she's going to take over starting Monday. So I think trusting them with the information that you know that they know and not being a control freak is uh, how I try to manage. I try not to micromanage. I know that everybody gets, from A to B to C in very different ways, and trying to remember that and trying to respect that and knowing that their way is definitely how their brain works and how their mind works. And however you get to see, I'm totally cool with. And I would say that my director above me is the same with me. She knows I have a process. She knows I get to the answer that I need to by working through it my own way. And so I think that for a lot of no micromanaging, which I really, really love. Okay, so have there been significant shifts in leadership at your organization? Yes. So when I was brought on in 2012, 11, 12, I don't know. I'm at 6.5 years, so I lied earlier. I haven't been here 7, I've been here 6.5. So I came in 2012. And so we had one director who had this, he's brought on the historic sites in his career. He's brought on this new park in his career, and that was opening during his retirement year. And we hired on one of our board members actually as our new director in 2015. And so that's been a huge shift. We went from somebody who was he was at retirement age when I started to someone who's much younger than that, who had never worked in the museum field, which, normally I'm a proponent of, like, yay, get some of these other careers in here too. Um, but that's been an interesting shift and interesting. She's really great at business. I would say that that's her her strong suit is the business end. And so that's been a huge shift in the last 4 years, is just getting used to a different working style, getting used to different concepts. And because of that, we've had a lot of turnover in our professional staff. And so I would say we have a full-time staff of about 30. And I would say there's probably only 5 or 6 of us out of those 30 that are maybe 10, maybe 10 left. So we've had a lot of turnover, and it doesn't seem to like really be slowing down. And maybe that's just work life. I don't really know. Um, but we've had a lot of turnover in the last 4 years, and they have changed. The shifts every time we shift um, somebody, it's always a change in the organization. A lot of times for the better. I mean, there are people that have left that I'm like, how is this ever going to happen? How is this ever going to play out? And it ends up playing out really, really nicely because we end up hiring somebody that's even greater than the one before it. Not in every case, but definitely in a lot of cases. I would say our organization has changed because we're trying to be more 21st century centric, which means we're putting ourselves out there for a lot. I feel like it's given us some mission creep in a lot of areas that not always comfortable for me. Um, And we now charge for about every program that we do, where we used to do a lot for the community for free. We still have a lot of low costs, but if we are not making money, that's not an okay thing anymore. Where I feel like our past director, we were allowed to, hey, let's do this thing for the community. It didn't matter, we had to stay within this budget, of course, but it didn't matter that we were bringing in anything. We are nonprofit, and that's kind of how it was looked at. Now it's a little bit more like, this is the income that I'm planning to make. If I don't make this income, what went wrong? How am I going to change that either for the future or not do it again in the future? So there's a lot, that risk feeling is a lot stronger, and it's helped bring up our income, which is good. Uh, but also it brings on, just some differences in that leadership. So always it's kind of like, what's that bottom line? What's that bottom number? And we do, I think we do some really good things because of that. We do a lot of projection and a lot of research before we go into something with price points and all those things. And those are really great tips to know and to be able to utilize. They're just not always the easiest when you think about a nonprofit and museum and kind of what your goal is at the end of the day. To me, it's not money. To me, it is, being able to give an experience to our community or to the visitors that come from all over the world. That means more to me. But I get, at the end of the day, we still have to pay the bills. I get that, the lights still need to be turned on and all of that. So it's that balance, and it's just a difference of leadership too. I'm not saying in all cases it didn't need to happen. In a lot of cases it did. We were, giving a lot for very little, and our staff was growing and our museum was growing, and that can be difficult. So I don't know, there's just like a balance and kind of preference, and kind of understanding what the top is doing when you're working with the bottom and all of that. um let's see, I don't know where I'm at. So yes, there have been major shifts in the organization. What qualities do you believe make up a good leader? To me, a good leader is someone that can be honest with their staff and say, this isn't going to work so well, or yes, this is going to work, or somebody that's straightforward, not in a mean way or even like blunt, but I think a good leader can tell you what's happening and be kind of transparent. And I think they should be honest. And I always appreciate somebody that if they don't know, they don't BS me. They're not like, well, it's this and this and this, and they have no idea. I would rather them just say, I don't know. I have no clue. You're right. I have no idea. Um, I like leaders that can work with a team in their opinions and their thoughts in the process. Um, I also think good leaders dive in and not scared to get their hands dirty. Somebody that is willing to put in the work with you and not just rule over you. I think that those make up good leaders. Do you feel gender roles still play a major significance on our professional industry? Absolutely, yes. I think I saw that more with our past director than I do now. Maybe it's because I have a female director, but I know like the staffing um, income was way different from men to women, even if they had a higher role in the institution. So I think it's more equitable now, but I still see that in overall in the industry, yes, I feel like gender roles, even though I feel like more women work in this industry than men than ever before, I still think that there's some inequity in how things are done, how roles are given, and kind of even just it's it's different because it's like it's expected of a woman to do this, 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 and this, and this. But if a man does, it's like, oh my gosh, you did this and this and this. And so I definitely see that, and I hate it. But I work with a lot of older volunteers too, and so I have my assistant program manager is a male, and me being female, it's like he does anything. It's like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. It's like I've been doing the exact same thing and it's expected of me. So I definitely see, I think it's just a cultural thing, or, I think it's just a societal thing. But I feel like with younger generations, it's evening out a little bit. What challenges do museums have in maintaining their relevance in society? Yeah, I see. And does leadership affect these outcomes? Yes, yes, and yes. I would say our museum is definitely reaching for the next big thing. Whatever is going on, we're like, yes, we have to do that, and we have to do this, and we have to do that. And it's all about this relevance, right? And I think to a fault, museums are starting to do this. It's like we have to do this, we have to do that, and we have to do this. We're really like not focusing on what the mission is and continuing that mission the best that we can. Um, so there's a lot of like grasping. And I'm not saying every institution, I'm saying our institution definitely does this. We're like grasping at all these like things. Well, if we do this over here, they're going to love us. They're going to do this over here, we're going to love us. And this over here, and they're going to love us. And this over here, they're going to love us. And I think if we concentrated on what makes us a museum, what that mission is, and doing that really, really well, we wouldn't have to worry about all these other things. Let those other industries worry about all those other things. This is what our industry is. This is what we do. So I think we're overreaching a little bit. I think, yes, I do want everybody that comes in our doors, I want them to feel like they have something for them. However, I think we're losing like the museum end of it a little bit because we're like edutainment and how can we show people this really great time? And I can be guilty of that in my own the programming sometimes because I'm like, we should do this and we should do that. And it's sometimes I think we lose sight of what that mission is, which is crazy because anybody that's going through JHU classes for museum studies, it's like museum mission 101 in every single class. It's so ingrained into you, like mission is the most important. But I definitely see, like in the reality of the working world, how that pressure is put on you a little differently and how you feel like you're just grasping for straws sometimes. So, yeah, it's definitely, and I think leadership does matter on that. I mentioned that our museum leader right now doesn't come from a museum background. So I think that can hinder us sometimes. I think sometimes it can hinder you if you do have someone from a museum background, and sometimes it can hinder you in a not museum background. And so, again, I think everything in moderation and balance and all of that. But I think leadership definitely affects where the ship is headed. I always, say that, yep, I'm paddling this ship as long as I feel like we're on mission and we're on point, and if I don't like how things are going, I got to bail ship and find a different ship, but at other points, I'm like, this is where the ship is headed. Am I going to stay on? Am I not going to stay on? Or I have to just be happy instead of complaining about where the ship is headed. Either I need to get on board or find a new ship to set sail with. So at this point, we're headed in this direction. And I think, that leadership is where that shift happens in the ship. They decide one direction or the other. And so, is there a heavy influence from the board? No, we do not have a heavy influence from our board. With our past director, we had 24 board members, and it was a lot. But even then, we didn't have a lot of influence from the board. Now we have 12, and we do not have a heavy influence. It's definitely staff led museum, not a board led museum. Is there, if so, is a beneficial relationship with the museum? I mean, the board members that are here, they seem like perfectly nice people. We have one that's an HR person, and so they help with a lot of our HR questions. We have one that's part of our Downtown Now campaign, and so he works downtown. Um, Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not as good as it could be. We have our computer people that does all of our IT. He's on our board. He owns that company, and I mean it's fine, but I don't know. I don't see any like major movers or shakers or any beneficial things to what they bring to the board. I don't really know what they contribute other than going to the meetings and I don't know. It's not impressive board at all. If you want me to go into further with that. But there's really not a lot to say because I don't see a lot of like fruits from their meetings or anything. So I read through all of their board minutes and all of that stuff, but it's basically stuff that the staff and the directors already decided that they're just agreeing to. So, and it's kind of always been like that. And it's unfortunate because I think that we could definitely have some bigger like development draws, fundraising draws from what they do. No, it's just kind of the unfortunately. Have my responsibilities changed while I've been in this position? Yes, a lot. So I started out as a part-time seasonal staff after a year and a half. And so that part-time seasonal staff also included, then I became year-round. And then I worked in gift shop, front desk, and I also went out to the schools and did outreach. And I did that 3 days a week out of the season. And then in the season, I'd come back to the sites and give tours here again. And then after a year and a half, they have let go our historic sites manager. And I was promoted about 3 months after she was let go from that position. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of programs. So I was developing a lot of like school programs, kids programs. We had like this, it was called Throwback Thursday. And so we would bring a component from the houses and do like some kind of kids activity or art project or whatever. And so in the off season, I was scheduling new programs for the on season, but that's where the volunteer coordinator hat came on. So I was doing that 6 months of the year and then being the manager of the historic site 6 months of the year until the programs have like blown up. And so now, and then I mentioned about a couple years into that, our historic sites curator was let go. And so then I put on that hat, and with my position also came intern coordinator. So I have like 4 things that I feel like could be separated out. But again, this year, I think that the volunteer coordinator position, I think I'll be training and kind of leading somebody else down that path, um, and taking that hat off. However, I still have 25 volunteers that are just at the historic sites that fill in for when we have staffing holes. So I won't give up that part of it, but bringing in new museum volunteers that will be moved to somebody else's hat. And so that's kind of how I've changed in the last 6.5 years is from a part-time staff to a full-time staff with different expectations that are on me now. So but not always do those hats get removed as you add more onto your work. And so it's just a matter of balancing and juggling those things. So some days are easier than others, and some days are much more tough than they need or should be. So it kind of just depends on the day. Um, do I find these changes helpful? The change that I found most helpful is going from part-time to full-time because then I was like had a full-time job, which was awesome. And then the second one that I think was most beneficial is adding that curatorial hat to my bag of tricks because um, there was just that no communication before. And so, for instance, we have in one of the houses, there's a library with 450 books, which A, I didn't even know there were that many books. B, I had no idea that they about 80% of them belonged to the family and that they had signatures on the inside and dates on the inside. And so being able to have that knowledge and then pass it along to visitors, I think enriches their experience. Like, wow, they have all these things. They're preserving all these things. They are, doing all these things. And, without that knowledge, we are like, here's a library. It's got books in it. Cool. Moving on. So I think it deepens the connection with visitors. Some of the things that we've learned by doing inventories, which hadn't been done in like 10 years before we started doing them. It was a mess. It was a complete mess. Things would get moved from one building to another building without putting it in the database about where it had moved. Um, After we did the first inventory, it was like we were missing like 200 objects until we were completely done with the inventory. And now we're down to like 50 things, which is still terrible, but better. We find things sometimes, like we just found something in a storage box up in the attic like 2 weeks ago. That was actually an artifact. So it was really bad. It was like really, really, really bad. It was like not museum best practice at all. And now we've turned a huge corner, but took a lot of work to get it that far. But there were some major problems, and that's why that person was let go. But I didn't want to see a new person coming in out of a different department and having the same problems. And so I was just like, let me do it. Please let me do it because I will do a good job and I know that I can do this. Um and so but adding the JHU degree really, really, really helped, and taking some of those public history classes and collections management classes and all of those things really helped. So those were the most significant changes, and I think they have been positive changes to my job. Um, Is my organization affiliated with other museums or institutions? If so, no, not really. There are 15 museums in our county, which is crazy. We're a really spread out county. And so we have all these little tiny cities and villages, and they all have their own little museums and their things. We do work well with all of our museums. We definitely don't see them as competition. We offer very different things from one another. And so we're happy to promote. If somebody's here at the historic sites or at the main museum center or Heritage Park, they usually have a liking for history and those types of things. So we usually promote all the museums. We have a flyer or a brochure with all the 15 different museums in that. And so we do a lot of promoting, and they do a lot of promoting for us. But we are not a part of any other organization. We have a lot going on with the three different segments: Heritage Park, the historic sites, and our main museum center. But we're all under the branch of the historic site or the Lakeshore Museum Center. That's kind of like our hub. So my advice for entering museum professionals. If you're entering a museum profession, I would say wear your flexibility hat a lot, all the time. One of our guest relations ladies said to me today, there's a lot of changes going on in that department. And she said, every time I have to work over there, I just pretend it's my first day on the job. And I thought, that's really great. I think coming in as a museum professional, you have to be like really agile and ready to move. I think especially in the 21st century when, technology is so much bigger and all these other pressures are there that didn't maybe used to be there. I think being agile and at least having an open mind about things definitely helps. And being willing to work with all the different departments to reach your one goal. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. Okay, so right now I'm doing my monthly report, and in my monthly report, I have to get everybody's volunteer hours and numbers so I can report that, and that goes to the board and to the public. I have to send an email to about 5 people every single month to get me their numbers. I can't finish my report until everybody else sends me their numbers. And that's just a small scale thing. That's like a no big thing. But if it's an exhibit update, if it's a proposal idea for a new program, it takes everybody else to do my job and do my job well. And so being patient, I think, and learning the team that you work with, and figuring out how they work best and trying to marry how you work best, being really flexible. It's all that's it. I think it's just being really flexible and patient. um what did what is your advice for future leaders? I think being honest and being true to yourself, you know, all of those core moral things like being the best person that you can, or, being honest and um, doing unto others as you want, done for yourself. And I think those make good leaders. I think humble people make good leaders, and those that can rely on the team around you, and also being willing to put in the work yourself, you're short-staffed, then you jump in there too. If the toilet's clogged and your maintenance guy's off for the afternoon, then suck it up and plunge in the toilet, whatever has to be done. I think those make good leaders, though. I think you gain respect around from the staff around you when you are willing to jump in and put in the work and they see you working hard. I think that makes them want to work hard too. And you almost have to be careful not to do that to a fault. I think you can do it and enable, but I think you can also do it and grow other people to work really hard too. I think you can teach ethic sometimes. You can definitely show it, and so I think those things shine through. I think being authentic is it shines through. Everybody knows a leader that has tried to BS them 6 ways till Sunday, and nobody appreciates it. Nobody likes it. You feel like you're being talked down to, or that you're dumb, and that's just doesn't have to be that way. So I think really being authentic and being transparent, being like, I have no idea how this is going to work out. This is what we have to do though. So I think making your team feel like you're part of their team is a good thing. I think there's always a disconnect or a difference, but I think you can limit those things. And I think people appreciate when you can be authentic and transparent with them. Um, what is your advice for current leaders? I think all those things. I think for future leaders, current leaders, and I think also, I think being willing to grow and look at things differently. And, if it doesn't work, try something else. And I think being willing to try something else and trusting the people around you. I think, whether they supervise you or you supervise them, I think trusting that they have the best intention. I think that at the end of the day, I could get really frustrated. We have some budgeting stuff that I know is not going to go through that I know we need, but at the end of the day, I have to know that my director working as the program director knows those things and is trying for those things and has a bigger piece of the pie that she's got to worry about. And just as hard as it is, like she has good intentions and most people do. And so I think, giving the benefit of the doubt, is always a good thing. And I'm not the best at that. I can jump to conclusions real quick. And so don't think that this video is like me being perfect because I am like preaching to the choir right now. And I'm not good at that. It takes me a couple days to process, you know, when things aren't going exactly the way I think they should or the way I want them to. But, we all have our own human growth pieces and things that we can work on. And I think being aware of those makes you a good leader. And I think it's okay to say, I screwed up and I'm sorry and that sucks. And I think you get a lot more dedication, and hard work when you can be that kind of leader. So I feel like I kind of rambled a lot and I hope you get something out of this. Our institution is very confusing with the three different areas and what we all do. If you need me to send you like organizational charts or like pictures, you can go, you can see a lot of what we do at the lakeshoremuseum.org. And you can hit Heritage Park, you can hit historic sites with the Hackley and Hume site, Fire Barn Skolnick House. You can hit our main museum center and see our temporary galleries, our permanent spaces. What's coming up next? Our big gala is coming up in the next month. Um, so I don't know. I think you picked a crazy leader. I think there's probably a lot better leaders out there. But this is what I do. So please let me know if there's any additional information I can pass to you, or if I said something terribly ununderstandable, please let me know and I can clarify. But I look forward to your work and your paper and good luck. And sorry I rambled on. It's like an hour long. So I will let you go. I will talk to you later. Talk to you soon. Bye.